What are some of the situations that you're finding these widows and orphans coming out of as they enter into a kinship? I know in the Western world, we so often don't know the full spectrum of what people are encountering in these nations where you're operating. So what are some of the stories?
I think there's a big majority of kids that are coming out of war zones or out of armed conflict areas. So, we started in Cambodia just after the genocide there, with just the UN troops in there and us. And we rescued a lot of kids. We ended up with 126 kinships in that country. A lot of traumatic stress. So there is that element that goes throughout the whole organization. And a lot of times they're coming from tragedies. There was an earthquake. We got a lot of kids from that. The tsunami, a lot of kids from that. And those kids, incidentally, I think they're some of the best adjusted kids of all the places that we have. And yet they saw so much death and destruction. We moved them in the night and we had to put blindfolds on them. They were so scared of the water. And we got them over into a place in Sumatra and we started raising them. They really have turned out, they're all adults now, of course, and they really turned out to be some fun, hilarious, but very faithful kids. They really love the Lord. But I love seeing them when I go over there or talking to them on the phone. They're a great thing.
That's really inspiring. I love to hear that the heart is, when possible, to reunite families and restore them. But when that is not the case, in the case of loss or some of these natural disasters, or to give them a new family, to place them so that they're not alone and doing life with people as they're brought together, that's really beautiful. What about some of the widows that you've talked about? Are there any specific stories you would like to highlight?
They'll say that they were running, and a lot of times it's dark, and there's gunfire, and there's unrest all the way around them, and they just grab what they can, a couple of blankets, and interestingly, they always grab some pots and pans to cook in and stuff. I had all this stuff, and I was carrying, and I was holding my 3-year-old's hand. And my other 2 kids, I was trying to keep them close to me, and there were people everywhere. And people were knocking people over, and I got knocked over, and I lost my daughter's hand. And it was dark, and I couldn't find her, and there was so much noise, and I just couldn't find her. And they'll start crying. I just don't know where she is. Well, what happened? Somebody saw her, was worried about them getting trampled, and they pick them up, and they save them. But they end up in a different refugee camp, or they end up in someone's house or something. And there will be hundreds of kids that come out of it, thousands at times will come out of it because they get separated from the parents. They aren't really orphans. They get treated as if they're orphans, but they're not. But that's the common story. But kind of how we get involved in it is we have groups of indigenous people that we've trained to go into refugee settlement. It takes a while for them to be put in, or the camp to expand to take them in. But there's a lot of stray kids out there, really where the kids are in trouble, where they're with somebody that they shouldn't be with. And there's a possibility that things are happening that shouldn't happen. If the child is with somebody and they're obviously really being taken care of, because you can't take them all. They make a decision, but it's all indigenous people making the decision about which kids are going to go and how they're going to do. And then we send a team in. It might take a few weeks, and then we send a team in to get the kids, and they've mapped the whole situation out, where the kids are, and we've worked with the UN and whoever we have to work with in that area. And we send a team in to go get the kids. And the team includes widows, by the way, and we get the kids. And it might take an hour and a half, 2 hours to accomplish it. But you can't stay much longer than that, because then everybody knows you're there and they know what's going on. You just get them, and the whole plan is to evac them to a refuge center that we've already built, or a building that we're using. And then we get them settled eventually into a kinship. So, and
it's a very strategic process.
Yeah, and we find the parents of a lot of kids. So we find out they're in another refugee camp. If we have access to databases in the UN and Save the Children and the Red Cross, everybody cooperates, we can find the parents. We can use the technology, and we'll get them back home.